McCormick, South Carolina was the last phone trip stop I had before I went on and continued to Atlanta. It's a very rare type of switch. It comes from Automatic Electric, the GTE manufacturing arm, and it's called a CXP-5. Turns out, however, that it's really made by a company called Leich, L-E-I-C-H. They called it Crosspoint, not crossbar, but Crosspoint. I got the impression that Crosspoint switching was based on a crossbar idea but didn't actually use crossbar switches. I don't know that for sure, though. The only other one of these I've seen was in Stanardsville, Virginia. And I know about that because when I was living at the commune, we would make regular trips to Charlottesville. There's a community called Ruckersville on US 29 on the north side of Charlottesville, and whenever we would stop at that store, I'd go over and see what I could find out about the phones. The office code was 985, and it didn't have a local calling area. You could only call other 985 numbers. But when I would dial 1 plus some office code that was not assigned in Virginia, it would make a very odd series of pulsing noises and then give me a recording from Charlottesville. Here's how that might have sounded in 1979.
This is a DDD equipment recording in Charlottesville, Virginia. Please check the number and dialing instructions and try your call again. If you need assistance, dial your operator. This is a DDD equipment recording in Charlottesville, Virginia.
Now this that pulsing is unlike any other switch. What is that? Those sounds are definitely associated with the switch dial pulsing out to another office. But it isn't just the sound of dial pulsing. There appear to be other relay sounds somehow. This also was the first place that I ever heard TSD. Dialing 1 plus a regular long distance call in the early 70s sounded roughly like this.
May I help you?
Now those MFs on the identifier seemed a bit exotic to me. It was an odd number of tones and the rhythm kind of threw me off. I was used to hearing 7 digits of MF or 10 digits of MF, and for automatic number identification, 8 digits.
Hold on, what? Controller.
But this, I'm not quite sure how to dance to that. It's a very unusual rhythm. But here's how it breaks down. It's key pulse, 5-3, and then our phone number, 985-2992. Start. Cool.
May I help you?
Wait a minute. Isn't that operator 24 from Greenwood, South Carolina? Well, yes, it is. These two calls that I've just played you are composites that I made up from McCormick and Saluda. And the reason I had to do that is that Stanardsville, Virginia had not a single recordable payphone in the entire vicinity. I went to Stanardsville, no recordable phones, and in Ruckersville, the only other community it serves, no recordable phones. And it was always kind of a piece of unfinished business bothering me that I had never gotten a recording of that very unique switch. I even tried recording with a microphone once, and, I should have kept that recording, but it was terrible because on US 29 there was so much traffic, and I ended up reusing the tape. So when I got to McCormick, South Carolina, dialed a call to a nearby office, and heard this. That was really good news. Here was one of these things, and there was a recordable phone. But while Stanardsville, Virginia, dial pulsed to TSD and had automatic number identification, McCormick, South Carolina, MF'd to TSD and didn't have automatic number identification. That's kind of strange. It can MF the number you're calling, but then once you get on the trunk, the operator has to ask you what your number is. Here's dialing 0 and nothing else. The local switch will wait to see if I'm dialing any more digits, and when I don't, we'll hear a key pulse, a 6, and another key pulse. Then we'll cut through to TSD, which waits a few seconds before processing the call to the operator. Could this thing really be sending key pulse, 6, key pulse? Maybe. That is definitely what we're hearing. So when you dial 0 by itself, there is a class of service tone to let the operator know that you're calling from a payphone. But watch what happens when I dial 0 plus a complete long-distance number from this coin phone. In this case, there is no class of service tone to tell her that I'm calling from a coin phone, although we do hear the operator cue tone, this. I'm going to say that I want to pay for it here, and I'll falsely state that I dialed 1 first. I really dialed 0 first.
May I help you? Hello?
Hello?
Are you making a long-distance call?
Yes, I am.
May I have your number?
465-9913.
Are you paying for the call here?
Yeah.
All right, sir. Was there something special about the call?
Nope.
Did you dial a 1 or a 0 before the area code?
I dialed 1.
Sir, would you mind hanging up and dialing again? It didn't come in correctly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
From these tapes, it's almost impossible, in fact it is impossible, to figure out what the rules and limitations were of TSD because there are so many inconsistencies in the way the equipment behaves and the way the operators behave. On the previous call, the equipment here in McCormick did not inform the operator that I am at a coin phone. Apparently it is supposed to do that because on this next call, it does. Having dialed 0 plus, I do tell the operator I want to pay for it here, and she is able to come up with the rate quickly. So the whole idea of,
Just a moment, sir. I've got to get the rate step.
back in Saluda might have been an excuse after all.
May I help you?
Yes, I'm going to pay for it here.
What's your payphone number?
465-9913.
That'll be 2:15 after your party answers.
Okay. I'll try later. Bye.
All right.
What I'm going to try next is resetting the trunk and dialing another number. What I haven't realized at this point is that this office, McCormick, MFs to the TSD in Greenwood. It doesn't dial pulse. And for that reason, my dialing another number isn't going to work. All it's going to do is wait a certain number of seconds, ignoring what I dial, and eventually time out to the reorder tone. Well, the flash handshake that this trunk makes when you reset it is triggering that coin class of service tone. That's understandable. There it is again, but my dialing is being completely ignored as it should be, because on any given trunk to TSD, you either MF or you dial the number you're calling. It's not interchangeable. Of course, you can dial the number you're calling and then MF the number you're calling from on some trunks, but not here. Yeah, I can make it reset, but I would need a blue box or something to send the number I'm calling anyway. And you know, the truth is that this CXP-5, I think, will pretty much send anything you want if you dial a 0 plus whatever. So, no point in resetting the trunk. It doesn't really let you do anything that you couldn't do anyway. 411 works here. If you dial it, it goes to TSD.
Directory Assistant 61.
Yes, the trunk resets, and I'm trying to dial a number and it's not going to do any good. This is basically second generation T-carrier noise. The 8 kHz tone is very loud, and there's NX1 crosstalk. Here's another call to 411. This time we hear the ringtone from Greenwood, but for some reason it's not very loud. Hey, there's no consistency here. I just flashed and reset the trunk, and it flashed at me, but there was no class of service tone. Come to think of it, that last call to 411 didn't give us a class of service tone when it flashed either upon reset. There is too much inconsistency to make any absolute statements about this thing. 511, which I think is going to a test board, can be dialed outright, and it goes to the Greenwood TSD. Here's 0 plus another long-distance number. This time we do get a class of service tone. I hang up on the operator. When I pick up again a few seconds later, you can tell that she was holding the line.
Alpha 26, may I help you?
Here's dialing 0 plus a distant area code and then 555-1212 for directory assistance. It's still free at this point in time, but the Greenwood NX1 does ticket it. For some reason, the operator comes on, hears the class of service tone, sees the number, and then just drops us off, resulting in a busy signal. On the most recent call, you can hear the MFs pretty clearly. I'm dialing 516-555-1212. From Standardsville, Virginia, I was able to get the Charlottesville DDD recording pretty easily due to the fact that you can dial a 1 or a 0 followed by pretty much anything, and it will get sent through to TSD. There it dial pulsed it, here it MFs it. Here's dialing 0 plus a bunch of zeros and then maybe 1211111, something like that, and it all gets sent.
The number you have dialed has been changed, temporarily disconnected, or is not a working number. Please refer to your current telephone directory or call information. This is a recording, 80311.
Dang, that thing is loud. By the way, the Charlottesville, Virginia TSD differs from all the others I've seen in that its vacant code recording doesn't come from within the NX1 system. It instead comes from the Charlottesville step tandem. To get this recording,
This is a DDD equipment recording in Charlottesville, Virginia.
the TSD picks up an outgoing trunk to the step tandem and dials 80. As far as I know, it's the only one that does that. From McCormick, you can dial 0000000, etc., and it'll all get sent to TSD. Let's do that.
The number you have dialed has been changed, temporarily disconnected, or is not a working number. Please refer to your current telephone directory or call information. This is a recording, 80311.
Now hang on a second. We were able to hear those MFs sent by McCormick to the Greenwood TSD very clearly, and it sent 11 zeros. That would include the initial 0 that I dialed. That's not supposed to happen, but hey, we're talking about 000 as an area code, so it doesn't matter if it screws it up, it's not going to work anyway. But let us count the zeros. It's key pulse, then a bunch of zeros, and then a start. I won't count the key pulse and the start. Here goes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Now there's a malfunction that doesn't need to be fixed. Some telephone switches will allow you to flash while they are outpulsing, and if you do it at the right time, you can drop onto the trunk either before or in the middle of the number being sent. This can be especially useful for phone phreaking. In this case, the TSD trunk allows you to reset it so easily that it doesn't make that much of a difference, but I'm still curious as to whether that can happen here. So let's dial 511, that's the probable test board code. McCormick MFs that to TSD, and let's try flashing right after it sends the 5. Yes, that does work. Many of the TSD trunks here have loud 8 kHz tones that seem to be beating. Those tones are a byproduct of the sampling rate of what is probably two T-carrier systems, each of which has a certain number of trunks. I don't know whether it's 12 or 24 or something like that, but the sampling rate is nominally 8,000 per second. But it's really something like 7999.5 on one and 8,000.4 on the other, and that produces a beat between the two tones that are unwittingly produced by that activity. The tones themselves are byproducts. Here's another place where I dialed 511 and flashed during the sending. This time I flashed right after the key pulse, and we got dropped onto a trunk that doesn't have the 8 kilohertz tone leaking in. It's still a T-carrier trunk, though. Subtly here you can hear another T-carrier staple frequency. (1333.3) repeating, which is basically this. It's a pulse wave, and you can actually hear that in modern telephony still in the 21st century. What that comes from, and boy, this is becoming a treatise on T-carrier, but anyway, what that comes from is that 8,000 times a second there is a sample which is 8 bits. But in 1 out of every 6 of those samples, 1 bit is used for answer supervision, and that 1 bit doesn't reflect the sound on the line. The bit will therefore stubbornly be on or off 1 out of every 6 samples, and that produces a pulse wave at 8,000 divided by 6 cycles per second, in other words, 1333.3 repeating. Yeah, okay, that explains that. I hope I don't have to talk about this anymore. We've been concentrating on TSD. Now let's make some local calls. First, here's an intra-office ringing number. I have no idea how this thing works, but one thing is for sure. The first loud cluster of clicks occurs right on the heels of the last digit dialed. Then there's a subtle double tick, barely audible. The background noise on the line changes a little, gets louder at that double tick. This is hard to hear, though. And then a final loud double tick, and it's ringing. This thing may not work very well, as you'll see in the next program, but it's pretty sophisticated. Let's see what dialing your own number does. It might just give you a plain old busy signal. It might give you a reverting circuit, a recording that says the number you've dialed is a party on your line. Or it might give you a reverting trunk that sounds like a busy signal, but then when you hang up, your phone rings. We'll see. Okay, so just a regular old busy signal. Now there's no vacant code recording. In fact, they haven't even bothered to wire up vacant codes so they're properly handled. After you dial a vacant code, the register you're using just sort of freezes, ignores any more digits dialed, and then eventually puts on its own reorder tone. Then the register times out and you're connected to a real reorder tone. It makes a connecting click and you're connected to a dedicated reorder trunk. And then the reorder trunk times out and you're left on the lockout relay for your line. And we have now been dumped completely off the switching equipment. We're just on the particular lockout relay for our line. From here, a small flash goes back to dial tone. Here's a vacant code followed by 4 more digits. Nothing happens, so I try dialing a few more, and I'm interrupted by the register reorder. And for an exciting variation, I'm just kidding, here's 1 plus something, I'm not sure what. This time it goes to a connected reorder, in other words, an actual reorder trunk. Here's what happened when I dialed 711. That is one of the local offices that is a Stromberg Carlson XY. I'm not sure which one it is because when I went through and dialed the local offices here, there were so many, well, you'll see. In the next program, I'll put the rest of the calls I made from McCormick, South Carolina, and also I'll mix in some calls to Standardsville, Virginia, made in 1981, during a time when that office was displaying a problem that, according to the tapes, seems to be common for this switch type. That's next.